Okay. Yes. So, welcome to our Telco Odyssey. Our Odyssey has 4 stops that we want to go through the attacks that we want to show you today. And as many Odysseys start with a miracle, the 5G miracle. Going through standards and specifications a few years ago, 5G introduces new security measures, countermeasures, in order to protect the subscriber privacy. The International Mobile Subscriber Identity, also known as IMSI, has very old attacks known as IMSI catchers, stingrays, or fake stations. So these new security identities or protected identities theoretically could solve this problem in 5G. Also, in the 5G core networks, we can spot all known protocols as being part of the 5G protocol stack. That led us to see if we can abuse or use these all known protocols in order to attack the upper layers. So please, join us in our Telco Odyssey. First thing first, we have to analyze the work or previous research that has been done through 5G. We found our colleagues, José Picó and David Pérez, in the 2019. They show theoretically the key aspects of the security in 5G. Of course, Ravi Shankar and Altaf, 2019 and 2021, with 5G new vulnerabilities and 5G IMSI catchers. And last year, Merlin Klosta and David Roper, their work, 5G SUCI catchers. And let me mention a very old request for common document, the RFC 5062, because there in that document, they are very well documented attacks towards the stream control transmission protocol. We will go through it later, but it's our base in our research that we would like to, be mentioned. Yes, our research. Our research mainly focused on 2 objectives. We wanted to hijack or impersonate associations between nodes, between core and radio nodes, and we wanted to see how we can attack these new identities that we call 5G IMSI catching on the wire. Why on the wire? Because we want these attacks to be real, practical, not under a theoretical point of view. We wanted to check how these attacks could be carried on or performed on the commercial networks. Let me introduce the HCI reference architecture, the NFV, Network Functions Virtualization. You can see in the bottom we have virtualization resources as computing, storage, networking being provided, offering services to the middle layer when the DNF, the virtualized network functions, they are over there. And at your right, you will find the most interesting zone, the management and orchestration, called MANO. There, the key masterpiece is the orchestrator. Orchestrator should contact the BNF managers and the BIM, the virtualized infrastructure managers, in order to coordinate everything. For one side, resources, and in the other side, services, 5G services. So we think about this and say, okay, let's implement or develop our attacks in what we call the sharp orchestrator, or poison, or malicious, or whatever you want to call. We prefer the sharp orchestrator. He will coordinate all the attacks. Sometimes we highlight also in red. We don't want to go into the theory of protocols and nodes, but we highlight one node, the AMF. It stands for Access and Mobility Management Function. This node, we need to modify its source code in order to perform the attacks. We will mention later. Last but not least, I mentioned that we want these attacks to be real. So we have to be sure that the status in terms of coverage and availability of the commercial 5G networks, as probably you will remember, there are 2 flavors, standalone and non-standalone. We wanted to be sure, this is from February 2022, this year, at the beginning of this year, with WarDrive Madrid. We combined 2 techniques. Passive, using software-defined radio. There are yet software capable of monitoring 5G cells, so we extract the information of each cells and combining that information with the active point of view with smartphones. As you know, there are a lot of applications. GeneTag Pro, for example, is the one we use. They are recording all the cells, the GPS position, and so on. That led us to extract this heat map that you can see, and the conclusions for that warp driving is that, yeah, it is available. We analyze data. You have the three main operators in Spain. One of them has both standalone and non-standalone real commercial networks already deployed in Madrid. But we are in the US. We didn't warp drive all the US. We really would like. If someone wants to collaborate, we are really wondered to. But we think it's better to take data from NPER. So yes, the status, same terms, availability and coverage for 5G networks is something real. Same here in Vegas. We bought a few days ago SIM cards, and we can double check that 5G networks are already being deployed in both servers. Let me briefly introduce the SCTP I mentioned at the beginning. It's back from the year 2000. In order to adapt the signaling subsystem subsystem 7, the SS7 networks should be adapted to the IP layer, so they introduced this new transport protocol. It's something like TCP or UDP, but with different telco, let's say, perspective, SCTP. And if you realize in the 5G protocol stacks between the new generation AP and GAP and the IP layer, we found already in the specifications in 2022 the SCTP transport protocol. I don't want to go into all the details. I want also to highlight two features of SCTP protocol. One is called verification tags. In order two peers to verify that they are talking to each other, they generate at the very beginning what is called four-way handshake. They exchange 4 messages, and in those messages, each other shows the other one is just a number, verification tag. And this exchange is, of course, in clear text. The other feature is multi-homing. It's very simple. One entity, one network node, could be in many others, in two, for example, different IP addresses. It's what they call multi-homing. I introduce this because later I will show you. Now we reach our first stop. We want to hijack standard associations between nodes. We use a very well-known base, what it's been in the RFC 5062. They say that theoretically the attacker could spoof the abort message. In order to spoof the abort message, we need to intercept or brute force the verification tag. If not, the attacker peer, won't process our message, will ignore. So we need to extract, first of all, the verification tag. Then we craft the message, something like I think we are all used to using scaping, for example. We can craft all these kind of messages. There are binary, it's a binary protocol, but we can create our own message and we will send to the network node. And we will cause a disruption, DOS. We will break the association between the two nodes. In the image, you see, we particularize the situation in a 5G network composed by the G node B, it's the radio node transmitting over the air. It's associated with the AMF. Already, this association, when one of them receives the abort, will immediately break the association. The other one will think that it already has the association. But as they are exchanging heartbeat message, heartbeat is just a message to say, hey, I'm alive. They're exchanging every time messages. When he wants to send a heartbeat, it's going to be rejected, and he will then abort the communication. So we abort first one node, and the second node will be a consequence. It's not directly aborted, will be the consequence as we send the abort to the node. Maybe it's complicated, let me show you in the video. Yeah. As I mentioned, everything runs on containers. So first things first, we will deploy 5G network. We are using OAI, Open Air Interface. Everything needs to be initialized and deployed. On the upper screen, you see the log file from our sharp orchestrator, SCTP abort attack on top, where we will see the stages and the process. It's just detecting the user IP device. Everything is being done with user IP B200 and B200 mini. It's waiting to be deployed. We will see in a few minutes in the Wireshark screen, yes, at your right, we will see the first initial four-way handshake. This is with the two network nodes, the AMF and the GNOB. They establish the association and they continue with the NGAP layer, the application layer. It's a setup request and setup response. You see how the GNOB is transmitting in the air. This is the capture from the GQRX application. And in the bottom screen, we are checking that there is an active association. There we are, highlighted in green. The GNOB OAI is the GNOB name. So they have one active association. Now we switch to the attacker point of view. First, the ARP spoof attack. Very simple, nothing new. We are just sending ARP messages to both of them. So we will do a man-in-the-middle attack. We need that to intercept the verification tab. As it's being sent in clear, we don't need anything sophisticated or complex attack. It's waiting for the traffic. You could see the heartbeat message on the Wireshark. Yes, highlighted in red, the verification tab. It's everything we need now. We will move to the Python terminal. On Python, we need just the two IP addresses, origin and destination, and the verification tab. We are parsing all these parameters in our terminal, yes. And now we will switch to the Wireshark. Take a look because at the bottom, yes, this is the abort message that we just craft and send to the node. The reaction is sent to the AMF. The GNOB is still transmitting because he didn't realize of the attack. It's still transmitting thinking that the association is active. The association, as you can see in the AMF, it's been broken. Yep.
One question. Is that verification code, is that static or dynamic?
Sorry?
Is it static or dynamic?
The verification tag is generated at the beginning in the initialization phase and will keep constant. Always no, only will change when the association needs to be reestablished. But once the association is been established, they are going to use is static. Welcome. Let me try to recover the video. Yeah. The above message that we spoof, we send, yes, we were waiting, yeah. The GNOB, the association in the IMF, it's gone. The GNOB was still transmitting, but when sends the heartbeat is going to be rejected, he will understand that the association it's been broken and immediately will stop. As you see the red lines on the log, he realized that there is no an active association and immediately will stop transmitting. So we cancel, we broke. That's the first step in our attack. It's not our objective. The objective is to hijack. How to hijack? Now that the legitimate GNOB has gone, we will use our attacker IP address to be a fake GNOB. Valid one will be operational, so we will take charge of the association. We will do the initialization, we will create our own verification tag, and we will establish our association. So we achieve the hijacking. We will hijack the association between the GNOB and the AMF. As you can see on the diagram, the abort was just the first step of this attack. The second step, as the attacker point of view, is to create the initialization, a proper one, and with the NGAP, the application layer, we will continue to associate the NGAP, so we will be a valid GNOB. Let me show you again the video of the attack. If you want, we know that it's complicated to track these videos. The IP address of our attacker station is ending in 158. The original GNOB, the IP address is ending in 164, and the core is very easy because the IP address is completely different. It's 192, 168, 70, 132. Let's go for the video. The beginning is being accelerated because the beginning is the same. We will deploy with our Sharp orchestrator, has to deploy the 5G network, initialize everything, SCTP multi-homing attack, recognizing the USRP devices, and so on. We will see on the Y chart, yes, those first initial SCTP four-way handshake and AGAP setup are the legitimate, let's say, or the original ones. The G0 B is up and running, so we switch again into the attacker point of view. First things of the attack, again, the ARP spoof. Sorry, this is the association to show you just as the evidence that the original association has already been established. Now we will start to, yes, eavesdrop to do the man-in-the-middle attack. We need to take the new verification tag, as this is a new instance of the network. We can't use the old one. We need to check to be sure that the verification tag that we are going to use in our attack is the valid one. We are waiting, yes, here we are. This is the verification tag. It's really a matter of minutes to snoof, to intercept the traffic. And now comes the last piece of the sophisticated, the complex attack, the multi-homing attack. We will send the same abort message as before. Once we realize that the communication or the association is broken, we will take charge. We will initialize the SCTP four-way handshake towards the AMF, and we will continue with the application layer, with the NGAP. All the parameters, there are a lot of parameters. We need 3 different IP addresses. We check everything. This is the association. Yeah, we send the first abort. Take a look, you see init and acknowledge. This is the initialization, the four-way handshake, cookie and cookie acknowledge. We continue with the NGAP setup request and response. Once it's finished, there we are, it's finished. We managed to continue with the application association. Let me show you in the video the multi-homing feature. You will see that in the init, we are letting the node, the core network node, that the G0 B now is present in 2 different IP addresses. The original one and the new one, our attacker IP address. So we impersonate. If we check the association, the SCTP, you can see that the G0 B name now is DefCON. This is the new G0 B that hijack or impersonate the old one. Thank you. Supposed to be the conclusion or stop our first attack. Let me move into the second stop. A lot has been already been said about IMSI catchers. In the beginning was IMSI catchers. As you know, 2G has a lack of authentication. SIM cards could not, blah blah blah, so on. Probably all of you know. With the 3rd generation of mobile networks, SIM cards were able to authenticate. So under the point of view of the attacker, the way to overcome this situation was to create a 3G fake station, but non-operational. When the subscriber will try to come on the 3G fake station, the fake station will reject the service. Say, I'm very sorry, but today 3G service is not operational. And next to this 3G station is going to be sitting a 2G fake station. That's been called downgrade attack. We want to adapt the downgrade attack in 5G. As you see in the diagram, same steps, we create a fake network, fake 5G station with a fake G0 B, and we have to modify the AMF. We need to hardcode the reject cows. We need a very specific rejection cows that let the subscriber know that only the 5G service is not available. If we go through the standards again, we found cause number 7 that fits perfectly our objective because it's 5G services not allowed. That's our idea, to create or implement in our sharp orchestrator. We'll listen to any request for any subscriber and we'll reject all of them. We don't want anything from them, just to reject their service, because sitting next to the 5G fake station, we will use another fake 2G station. And there we are, under the fake 2G, as many devices, your latest Android model, still today, it's very nice with us and wants to cooperate in 2G mode. I think only Android introduces a new feature in the last version that we are able to, disable this technology. So let me show you the downgrade attack. This time we're going to use a Faraday cage at the right. Wait a minute, yes. We are the sharp orchestrator. It's initializing again the 5G network, the log files. You see a new terminal at the bottom right. This is the computer running the 2G fake station. We use Osmocom. Upper terminal network in the box, very easy. Osmo TRX and Osmo BTX. It's running in a very small laptop. I don't know if you remember the GPD, Pocket GPD. Yes, with the new terminal, we are using a camera to record all the setup. You can see the logs. This is the user IP B200 we are using for 2G. So this is our fake 2G station connected to the Faraday cage. You see our victim, the mobile, and at its right, it's sitting the fake 5G station. As you see, the G-Node B is already running, so it's transmitting. Mobile, it's in airplane mode for the remote purpose, so we can introduce everything. We will disable the airplane mode, and you will see in the log, in the 5G station, in the 5G fake network, yeah, in green, you were rejected with cause number 7. I don't know if you can take a look in green. So now the mobile device is being rejected, and you can see in the terminal, in the 2G stations, you can read the IMSI, the email, the mobile now it's come into our fake 2G station. We just track with GNetTrack. We wanted to show you that it's highlighted in red that is connected to a GPRS network, showing you that there is no tip trick here. We will also show you traces from Wireshark, because we can be hard-coded again the cause, the release cause. So we wanted to show you that the reject cause in the traces is 5GS services not allowed. So yes, we did it. The 2 stops of our attacks, we managed to accomplish them. We wanted to end this second stop of our Odyssey, giving you information, providing you information, because these Downgrade and IMSI catchers have been here for too long. There are many solutions to detect them or to monitor them. None of them still today are updated to 5G. We really hope that in short term will be updated with new devices. We have 2 different types of solutions to monitor based on Android or based on Linux boxes. Android smartphones needs to be root because the communications between the modem and the OS are proprietary. We also require a previous reverse engineer work. We need that someone reverse how this information is being exchanged between those. We highlight 3 solutions. I think that the Snapshot is the one that supports today more huge smartphones. And based on Linux, there are again 2 solutions, active or passive. Actives, they are using a SIM card inside a mobile, Osmocom phone mobile, so they will monitor all the traffic. Passive use again software-defined radio to scan all the frequencies. Whenever it finds a cell, will take all the information. Some, like the 4G Coco Drive, will compare the cell ID with a database. If the cell is okay, will catalog as fake or not. Some other solutions do behavioral analysis, protocol analysis, and so on. As I just say, Android last release has this functionality to disable, yes.
What makes the user go to your 2G cell?
Sorry, I don't understand your question.
Let's say you have a 3G cell.
Yeah.
What makes the phone go to the wrong 2G cell?
Yeah. Phones are made by programmers, by developers, trying to connect to anything. When the mobile is being rejected in one technology, we'll put a cross in that technology, and his tuner will search for new cells in different technologies. They are always searching for new cells. Even if we are camped in one cell, they are always going through monitoring different cells. So when we move, they will change constantly from cell to cell. So they are scanning cells in all of the technologies supported by the modem, right?
Does the reject can control to which technology the user will connect?
When we reject one technology, this is why we have to pick up carefully the reject codes. We can disable the SIM card completely. We can disable the UE. We have to play with the reject causes. In the downgrade attack, we only want to reject the technology itself, not the whole SIM card or the whole mobile device. This is why we are using specific reject causes for the downgrade attacks. Okay, and let me welcome Miguel that we will continue.
Okay, so now we arrive to, in my opinion, the best stop in this tech odyssey, which will focus on attacks to subscribers' identities. As you may know, in 5G standards, they have defined multiple mechanisms to improve the security of this technology, and one of them tackles the well-known IMSI catchers that take advantage of the fact that the IMSI, or the subscriber's identity, is sent over the air in clear text. So how have they tackled this problem? Well, they have defined two new identities. In one hand, the SUPI, or Subscription Permanent Identifier. This can have the value of the IMSI or the NAI. The NAI is the Network Access Identifier that will be used mainly in 5G private networks. So for these attacks and these demos that we are going to show, we are going to assume that the SUPI and the IMSI are equivalent. And on the other hand, they have defined the SUCI, or Subscription Concealed Identifier, which, as its name suggests, it will be the concealed or encrypted identity of the user. For this, it will use a cryptographic encryption scheme that we are not going to explain in detail. But what we need to highlight about the SUCI is that each time a user registers with the SUCI, it will be different, although it has been derived from the same identity or IMSI. But what exactly is going to be encrypted? So as you may recall, the IMSI is made up of three different elements: the country code, the network code, and the user code. It is this last one, the user code, the part of the IMSI that is going to be encrypted. However, 5G surprisingly have also added the possibility of not encrypting the user code. How? Using what they call the null protection scheme. When a user registers with the null profile protection scheme, the user code won't be encrypted. So we will have the country code, network code, and user code in clear text, just as in previous technologies, as you can see in the highlighted in red. So when we knew this, our first objective was maybe we could develop a 5G SUPI catcher, and that's what we did. We implemented this SUPI catcher in the Sharp orchestrator. So the Sharp orchestrator is going to deploy the 5G network, the fake 5G network, and when a user connects to our network, the Sharp orchestrator is going to register that connection and analyze the traffic of the network. If it has registered with the null profile, it will catch that IMSI and log it into a file. So now let's see the video demo of how this SUPI catcher works. So we are going to deploy a 5G network with this Sharp orchestrator. It is important to mention that it is going to deploy first the core network and then the radio node due to stability problems. There we have the mobile phone in airplane mode. We are going to use a programmable SIM card, and then when we deactivate the airplane mode, the user is going to try to register. The Sharp orchestrator is going to register that connection and catch the IMSI. As we are going to see, just there the user has tried to connect and the Sharp orchestrator, success, it has catched that IMSI. As you will see now, the country code and the network code are 00101 because we are using a programmable SIM card. Now we are going to check the logs of the Wireshark logs, and as you will see, it will use the null scheme, so the user code is completely in clear text. Okay, so now we know that we can deploy a SUPI catcher when a user registers with the null profile protection scheme. But what happens when it registers with a SUCI? And how is the SUCI calculated? Well, as it was mentioned earlier, the SUCI will use a cryptographic encryption scheme, and one of the inputs of this scheme will be the public key of the operator. This public key will be stored inside the SIM card. But what do we mean when we say that the public key is stored in the SIM card? Well, a SIM card is a smart card that provides a file system and has different elements. One of them is the master file that can be compared to the root directory in a Linux system. Then we have the DFs, or dedicated files, that can be compared to directories. And then we have the elementary files. These are the files or the elements that store the information of the subscriber. For example, there's an EF for the IMSI, for authentication keys, for temporary identities. There are hundreds and hundreds of elementary files. And what is the key difference in 5G SIM cards? A new DF appears. This DF is known as the DF5GS. As you would imagine, this DF has associated with it different elementary files, and it is one of them, the bottom one, the SUCI calc info, where the public key of the operator is going to be stored. So if this EF exists and has information, the mobile can retrieve that public key and then calculate the SUCI. But to calculate the SUCI, there needs to be another element, which are the 5G services. The SIM card provides different services, and some 5G services are related, and depending if these services are active or not, the SUCI will be calculated by the mobile equipment or by the SIM card. But why would an operator be interested in calculating the SUCI with the SIM card? Maybe because they use some values in the cryptographic protection scheme that are custom to them to improve the security and privacy of that SUCI. So the key aspect here is that to calculate the SUCI, there has to be different elements in the SIM card. A 5G file system with an associated elementary file that stores the public key, and different active services related to 5G. So now, we did the SUCI Catcher with a programmable SIM card, but we wanted to know if we could do it with commercial SIM cards. So we used the commercial SIM cards that we used in the world driving, and with an open source tool, we checked if these elements existed in these commercial SIM cards. To our surprise, none of the Spanish commercial SIM cards had this 5G file system or these services active, which meant that by force they would have to register to the network with the null protection scheme, and therefore with the IMSI in clear text. So what's our next objective? To use the SUCI Catcher we just showed with the Spanish commercial SIM card. And this is this small video. It's the same. We are going to deploy 5G network, and let me pass, because if not. And then when the commercial SIM cards tries to register to this network, as you can see, the country code is 214, which is the Spanish country code. Of course, we haven't put the whole IMSI for obvious reasons. So now we knew that we could do a SUCI Catcher with the Spanish commercial SIM cards, but we are here in Las Vegas in the US, and we wanted to know what was the status in the US commercial SIM cards. So just 3 days ago when we came here, we bought the SIM cards of the 3 main operators here, and we did the same process as before, checked if this 5G file system and these services existed. To our surprise, all of them had this 5G file system, and 2 of them had these services active. But then we checked for the elementary file that stored the public key, and for 2 of them it was invalidated, we could not enter, and for the other one it was empty, which appeared to us that maybe they will use the null profile protection scheme, because there's nothing in that elementary file, so there's nothing to retrieve, there's no public key to retrieve. So after knowing this, although these commercial SIM cards appear to use the null protection scheme, we wanted to know what could be done if indeed they used the SUCI or encrypted identity. And that's our next stop. So as you may imagine, 4G and 5G are technologies that are going to coexist for a long period of time. And we asked ourselves the next question. What could be done if an attacker has obtained the IMSI of a victim through a 4G IMSI catcher, but then that victim buys a 5G phone and starts connecting to a 5G network with the encrypted identity or SUCI? The attacker will lose track of this victim. So we wanted to find if there could be a possibility to find the relationship between the IMSI and the SUCI. And that's when we started investigating and found a paper, the paper mentioned earlier, developed by Merlin Klosta, where they explain an attack to find the relationship between an old SUCI and a new SUCI. As I mentioned earlier, the SUCIs are going to be different, but with the attack, they found the relationship between 2 SUCIs derived from the same IMSI, from the same identity. So now we implemented his attack into our sharp orchestrator, but relating the IMSI with the SUCI. So to understand this attack, we need to briefly introduce the part of the 4G authentication process. So we will have two peers, Alice, who will act as the mobile phone, and Bob, who will act as the network. The first message that Alice is going to send is the registration request. In this message, Alice is going to register herself with her real identity, because we're in 4G. But Bob is not naive, and he will not believe it. So he will ask her to prove herself. How? By sending an authentication request. It is important here to highlight that this authentication request is going to be signed. So Bob proves that he is indeed the network. And now there are two possibilities. One, that Alice does not recognize the authentication request, the signature of Bob, so she won't believe that Bob is the network, and she will reject Bob with an authentication failure, the red message. And on the other hand, she recognizes the signature and believes that Bob is the network, so she will answer with the signed challenge response, the green message, with the authentication response. Now, what would be the difference if Alice uses the SUCI, not her real identity, the MC? Well, the registration request will look like this. Alice will register with an encrypted identity. However, the 5G authentication process, although the registration request changes, the rest of the process will remain the same. So after knowing this, the first objective to relate an IMSI to a SUCI is, okay, if we obtain a legitimate authentication request from Alice, not the encrypted identity, it will work with the encrypted identity of Alice. So that is the first step. Then we save that legitimate authentication request and use it when Alice registers to our network with an encrypted identity. Depending on the response we have, if it's the green one or the red one, we will know that Alice is the encrypted identity or not. I know this is tough, so we are going to explain it again on how we have implemented. So obviously we are not going to remain in the example of Alice. We want to use this attack to whoever we want. So the first prerequisite is to have a victim IMSI. We can achieve that using a 4G IMSI catcher. And then we can start with the first phase, which will be to obtain a legitimate authentication request for this IMSI that we have. For this, we are going to use an open source user equipment, and the only thing that we need is the IMSI. We are going to put that IMSI in the configuration file, and the user equipment is going to register to a real network. As the real network will have in its database that IMSI, it will respond with a legitimate authentication response, and then we will authentication request. And then we will save that authentication request, and then we can follow with the step 2. We deploy with the sharp orchestrator our fake 5G network, and whenever a user, whatever user tries to register with the SUCI, we don't know which user it is, we are going to respond with the authentication request we just saved. And then, depending on the answer, we will know if that SUCI is related to the IMSI we had or not. It's as simple as that. So, okay, to sum up, we have our victim IMSI. We have our open source user equipment. For that IMSI, we obtain the legitimate authentication request of a 4G network. And then we save that authentication request and use it to whoever registers to our network in the SUCI. And depending on the response to our authentication request, we will know if that SUCI is related to the IMSI we had or not. So this is going to be the video demo of this attack. So as I said, the first phase of the attack is we are going to use. So okay. What? So as I said, no commercial SIM cards appear to use the null profile. So to make this attack, we are going to use a programmable SIM card that we have programmed to be able to use the SUCI. So the first step of this attack is going to deploy our 4G network because we are using our programmable SIM cards. And the open source user equipment is going to register to this network, and it will retrieve the legitimate authentication request. As you will see, it just tried to register. It has saved, now it will save in a JSON file this authentication request. And now we can start with phase 2, which is to deploy with the shop orchestrator the fake 5G station, and whenever a user registers to a network, we will use that saved authentication request and check for the response. So now the shop orchestrator is going to detect that file. It is going to know that we have a fake authentication request there. And then when we have the mobile phone in airplane mode, and when we deactivate that airplane mode, we will send the authentication request, and we will see which is the response. So now the G node B has been deployed, the network has been deployed, and we are going to wait for new connections. We deactivate the airplane mode, so the user will register with the SUCI, and now the shop orchestrator will see if it's the MC or not. Okay, so now we have cracked that SUCI because it has answered us with an authentication response with the green message. So now we know that the MC we had and the SUCI that just tried to register are the same. We are going to check this in the Wireshark. As you can see here, the registration request has been done with a SUCI, with an encrypted identity. And in green, now it will show the answer to our authentication request is the authentication response and not the authentication failure. So there's our SUCI Cracker. Now let's continue with MC catching on the wild.
Quick question, sorry. I assume you checked this for actual physical SIM cards, right? Would it be a safe assessment that...
Sorry?
So I assume you checked all this with physical SIM cards. Is it a safe assessment that these SIMs are saying...
Yes.
Yes, the Odyssey was coming to an end. But before, we wanted to check, because all the attacks that we have shown, as you will probably realize, they are on a test environment. So we wanted to check if this was real Odyssey. A word of advice, as probably you know, transmitting in the 5G frequencies, it is illegal. This is not an invitation to anyone to transmit in the 5G. This is just a theoretical simulation. Please do not take in the wrong way. Yes, as you have been seeing these Faraday cages and so on, so we wanted to be sure that all of you understand that this is just simulation. Yeah, all the 5G open source solution requirements require at least x86 architecture and i5 or i7 processors. So we have to forget about all these 5-volt single-board computers, Raspberry 4, 5, 6, Android, and so on. We were wondering how to adapt, how to do this in a practical attacker way. And we came up with the idea of the car. The car provides mobility, so we can drive around an industrial area, commercial area, and using an inverter, the car provides a very good power source. So, okay, why not to rent a car to adapt our infrastructure into the car's trunk? And the last step was to ensure the coverage, our signal strength. In order to assure all these MC catching attacks, we need to provide a very good signal strength. So we use magnetic mounts in order to attach the antennas into the car's body. So again, theoretically, one could drive transmitting power enough to successfully all do this previous what we have shown. Any coincidence between this car and our real cars is just pure coincidence. We don't have nothing to do with this car. Yes, was our final proof to check that the Odyssey was a real huge one. We want to conclude because I think that almost every country in the world recognizes 5G as a critical infrastructure. All of them have been publishing 5G risk analysis or 5G baselines or 5G security measures, things like that. So, under a point of view to analyze only 5G is just a partial point of view. 5G, almost all operators in the world right now, they are not providing service only with 5G technology. They rely also, maybe in rural areas, in some areas it's impossible to use all around only 5G. They use the other legacy, let's say, or old technologies as 4G and 3G. And you see a lot of vulnerabilities and research and previous work targeting other protocols, not just the one that we saw today, but there are a bunch of different works that could be very quickly adapted into 5G. So only limiting the scope of this analysis to 5G provides a partial, for sure, not false, but perspective of the security of how should be hardened or configured properly these mobile devices. And only in the specific cases where the devices or the terminals are only going to use only 5G, the impact of these attacks is completely different. We can think about economical losses for sure if we disrupt an assembly factory, for example. If we do a DOS to any of those robots in a factory assembly, we really would like, if we can track drone management doing traffic regulation, to have this location is really, not say, again, it's not an invitation to anyone to commit fraud or do these kind of things, but could potentially lead anyone to do these kind of applications, tracking drones that has huge impact to all of us, same for regular transportation. Therefore, we conclude our Odyssey hoping that in the future these attacks and risks will be considered for monitoring for sure and mitigation. Thank you very much for joining us today and carry with our Odyssey. Thank you all of you.